Okay, we're recording. This is Jeff, and I am with Shelly today. And Shelly has been on the Paul Vanderklay, well, Bridges of Meaning. I shouldn't call it Paul Vanderklay. That might upset the the Sacramento meetup guys. It is the Bridges of Meaning Discord. And Shelly, you have had a conversation scheduled with Paul Vanderklay before, but that fell through or something. Am I remembering that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like you said, it's kind of like a lottery to get a spot there. And so, you said you might want to have a conversation here on the Rando's United channel. Maybe, while you wait for a spot to free up to talk to Paul, maybe I'll do my best Paul Vanderklay conversation impression.
Yeah. Paul's great, but he's just a guy, and we can have good conversations without him. That was kind of his whole point.
We can do our best.
Yeah, we'll endeavor.
Well, do you want to tell just a little about yourself, about your story, and maybe we can just go from there?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from Oklahoma, and I was raised in a non-denominational background. I've always been a Christian all my life. I went to nursing school for university, but was always really drawn towards missions and drawn toward the idea of going into another culture and learning other languages. And so after a little bit of work as a nurse, I joined up with a Bible translation organization and trained a little bit in Dallas, near-ish you-ish. And then
Where in Dallas?
Duncanville.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, ish, I don't know. It was like the school had a Duncanville address and my house had a Dallas address. We were just kind of on the line there.
Yep.
So then in 2012, I went to France to learn French. Was there for about 10 months and then moved to West Africa, where I am now, in 2013. And have been here, off and on since then, learning a local language to help translate the Bible into that local language. So then in 2017, kind of the way I found Discord was a friend who's also in this organization told me about this Jordan Peterson guy. And honestly, the way she presented it, I wasn't like super, interested. She's like, oh yeah, this Canadian psychologist. And I was like, okay. But then a couple months later, she posted a YouTube video and I was just like totally hooked. So
do you remember which one it was?
It was him on the Rubin Report with Ben Shapiro.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the three of them just had like really great conversation. And I was already going through all this, like, I wasn't ever I guess in college I got like a little politically minded. But then like living in France and then living in West Africa, I don't know, the way I can describe it is, when maybe if you have a job and you're working a job and then you leave that job to go to another job, and at your new job, things are like way worse, and you start thinking about what it was that made your old job so great. Like, why is this so bad? And why was that one so good? And so I was already going through a lot of these, thought processes of what my values were and why they were the way they were when he entered the scene for me. So it was just kind of an interesting conglomeration of timing there.
Mm-hmm.
So then, the same kind of thing, I guess, as everybody, the YouTube algorithm showed me Paul Vanderklay, and here I am. Yeah.
So you found Jordan Peterson through a friend that works in the same line of work that you're doing now through the Bible translation.
Yeah. She's stateside. She works as a recruiter.
Okay.
Actually, I posted a podcast that she was interviewed in, and then Catholic versus podcast
Yes.
posted.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't get a chance to listen. But apparently, the host of that podcast has a connection to someone else who's on the Discord. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Well, I think he has a Discord account. I don't know if he's on very often, but
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that was a funny
Small world.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
So
small world until you have to travel from one side of it to the other.
that's true. That's true. It's a small world until your internet breaks.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is actually one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. I don't know if you wanted to say any more or talk a little bit more about anything else, but I did want to get into Jordan Peterson with you, but maybe not necessarily yet. I just wanted to see if there was any more about your work that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. I do want to kind of spiel about translation for a second. Because no, I saw on the Discord general the other day, they were talking about translation, and it kind of bleeds into Jordan Peterson too. Basically, anytime there's a discussion involving, words or language, I'm like sucked in. Partly just from being a language learner myself. I studied Spanish in school and, spoke a little bit, and then went to France and learned French, and then learning an unwritten local language here. Just those experiences. And actually, there's a fair bit of bilingual or trilingual people on the Discord. Mm-hmm. That's actually something I really love, is the international vibes. And anyone I think who speaks more than one language can, I hope relate to this, just of, in some languages, there's special words that aren't in the other languages. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, helps you see the world differently. Did you ever watch Arrival? Did you ever watch that one?
I did, yeah, with Amy Adams and what's his name? Jeremy Renner. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that portrayed it really well, the way she starts seeing the world differently. She starts seeing time differently, kind of without her. It was like an involuntary thing. Mm-hmm. Like she didn't necessarily want it. Maybe it was just completely involuntary and I thought that was really good, because I've always said, and that's what I learned, when you learn a language, you learn a culture. Mm. And so they kind of go hand in hand. I'm not talking about, your Spanish in high school or whatever, but when you're immersed in a language, you learn how they speak, and how they speak actually reveals, under the iceberg, what their values are, and it comes out. And so there are certain words in Konyanke and French that just verbalize things better than English. Mm. And so me with my teammates, we call it Franglish. We'll just kind of mix, or it's interesting, depending on the topic, we'll code switch. We'll go back and forth depending on, if I'm irritated or ticked off, I might go to French, just because it's a little bit I'm mad at you, but I want to keep this kind of light. It's interesting. Language is so interesting. Uh-huh. And you learn a lot about that. So I did a little bit of training in Dallas before coming. I took a sociolinguistics class, and so if you watch married couples who have different mother tongues and interview them, all kinds of interesting things come out. Mm. So yeah, in that vein of language, I've been thinking about this, and it was in a book I read recently about how, kind of in the biblical storyline, you've got all these ethne that are created, excuse me, all these languages, all these family groups, all these nations created at the Tower of Babel, and they spread around the earth. And then you've got the end, Revelation 7:9, 7 something, where all the tongues and tribes come back together. Mm. And this book was talking about, actually, if you believe that God created all these languages, then this idea that every people group, every language, every culture has special things, their own words to worship God, or represent God, or describe God. because we always say that here. I hear it a lot, like, oh, the language is too shallow, or like words aren't doing it, our words aren't enough, you know? And I think that's going to be the case, and it's the case in each one until the reunification at the end. So that's kind of
really
this
cool.
big idea. Yeah. It's such a huge and deep, rich concept that I love. Yeah. And that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And yeah, like, so, you know, when Jordan Peterson has said that before, you know, words matter, but words have baggage. Even, you know, here, I don't know who started, I don't know if Paul started it, or maybe it came from something else before I got here, but this whole colonization word, you know, I'm colonizing your channel, that kind of startled me as, you know, someone who's living in a post-colonial country, you know, like, whoa, we're going to use that word. But it's cool because you've kind of taken it and like ascribed a different meaning to it, which is what we do in translation too. Like, we're working with, you know, key terms, and like, well, how do you talk about the Holy Spirit in Konyanke? Like, what words are we going to use? Are we going to use this word for ghost that has like the actual ghost meaning that we would think about, and we're going to ascribe it new meaning? Are we going to use this power word? Are we going to use this wind word? You kind of have two options of, taking an existing word or term and like giving it new meaning, or making your own term that you're going to have to teach.
That sounds like it could be really challenging, because one of the thoughts that came to mind, and, you know, you can tell me whether or not this is something that happens, but, you know, one of the things that I thought of was, you know, it takes getting to learn their culture and how they perceive the world first, and just see if there are any concepts that are parallel initially where you can maybe save some time. You know, you do some work, like some investment of, okay, we really have to spend some time understanding how, you know, this group of people perceives the world, and how they see reality, and how they express how they perceive reality. And then I have to see if I can even understand that concept before I can then even try to, you know, communicate this other concept, to see if there's even a bridgeable gap, you know, just taking these two concepts, or if I have to find something else as like a bridge.
That's exactly right. And then sometimes you like do all the right things, you find a word, and, you know, then you go test it. Maybe it makes it through the testing process, you get it consultant checked. Your consultant says, well, ask this question. And then you go back and you find out that, actually that was not the right term. And then you're back to the drawing board. So, which is like, I mean, it's the word of God. So you don't want it to be, you want to translate it well and right. And that just takes a lot of time and work. Yeah. Thankfully, like with my language, it's part of a pretty large language tree in West Africa. And there are lots of other projects that are similar. So I'm like standing on and thankfully, I'm not the decision maker. I am kind of a liaison between my teammate in America, who is the decision maker. He's the one that like knows Greek and Hebrew and is making these hard decisions. I just kind of provide the data that he needs from the field. So that's good. Yeah.
It could be easy in some ways and hard in others, depending on your personality type. You know, I think if you're a big ideas person and you're an entrepreneurial type, it's probably pretty difficult. But if you're more like, I just like getting down and doing what needs to be done, and, you know, not really having to come up with the ideas.
I mean, honestly, it's been harder as I've gotten more and more invested in the work, when like we go against what I want to do, but I'm still happy. I mean, like at the end of the day, I trust him and trust God and trust the process. So you kind
of got to let it go at some point and just do your best.
Yeah, right.
That's fascinating.
So on the Discord, they were talking about different English versions, and they posted that like Star Wars. Did you see that? It was like a Star Wars chart of the different English Bible versions.
I didn't see that one.
That was a big hit in the Bible translation community, let me tell you. Like, people are already like super into that, and then people are already like super dorks. So that was a winner.
I'll have to scroll back through and look that up.
Or you can just Google Bible translation Star Wars and it'll pop up.
I'll have to check it out. That's fun.
So the only other thing I was going to say about that was just if you liken it to like just the Discord community, I've been thinking about it a lot, because I love the diversity on the channel, as far as like Orthodox and Catholic and atheist and evangelical. I love it. And I'm learning a lot, and you can see like how people view the Bible differently.
Mm-hmm.
And just for me thinking about why I chose this work, I'll do a little numbers thing real quick. There are like over 7,000 languages in the world. And there's still about 1,800 of them that don't have a Bible project started, a translation started. So it's not even, this is a very big picture, but yeah, for me, like true love is, kind of giving somebody the truth, that your truth, and setting it on the table and letting them decide, whether they're going to pick it up or not.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like that's what God did with us with Jesus. He put himself into a form we would understand, and and we get to choose, what we're going to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what everybody in the English speaking world has been able to do.
Mm.
And, a lot of different language groups, all the major language, like high population have been covered, but there's still, lots of tiny people groups, especially like in Papua New Guinea and West Africa. That's where it looks linguistically diverse. Those are the most dense areas in the world. And so they don't have, I'm not saying, you put the Bible on the table and, automatically everybody's good. I'm not saying that, but they don't have the option of looking at that and deciding what they want to do with it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't have the choice yet.
Yeah.
So
does the group that you're working with, trying to figure out how to ask this question, like, did they have, I would presume that they had some type of indigenous spirituality and way of looking at the world in that way. Was it one of the big three world religions, or did they have something before?
Yeah, I can say that. I can say that. So yeah, this is a Muslim people group, and then kind of within the underpinnings of what it's called like African tribal religion, just kind of that's what it's called, African tribal religion, kind of what your fetishes and sacrifice and things like that. So it's kind of a mixture of those two things is what this people group is.
Is there has there been anything that you've learned as you've gotten to know the people and know the culture that you either found intriguing or surprising about their it just completely flew out of my mind what you called it, the African tribal religion? Yeah. Or have you learned much about it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, like, actually, I don't think that they would ascribe to that category. They would just say that they're Muslim. Mm-hmm. But I would disagree.
But something existed before
Islam?
Islam, yeah.
Yes, African tribal religion.
Yeah,
right.
And so from their perspective, they wouldn't see remnants of that. It's just considered more of Islamic religion to them.
It's kind of one of those things that's like so deep down in the iceberg and so like close to their core value. It's not something. It's just kind of like when you would tell a Christian, "Hey, you're actually super materialistic." They're like, "Oh, what are you talking?" There's like no. It's so like ingrained in our Western culture that we can't really see it.
Right.
So yeah, that's not like a daily conversation I hear people banding about.
How many? I just have some history questions, and if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But
I'll make one up, no problem.
How long ago? Like, is it 500 years further back before Islam had become the religion?
I think it was like 400 came through one particular tribe that brought it, and it was by the sword. Mm-hmm. And it's just so funny because I've heard like missiological studies done, and it's kind of like in the end it doesn't really seem to matter like why people started. Mm-hmm. Later on it doesn't seem to matter, like they're as loyal as those who chose. So
I was just curious how far back in their cultural memory,
yeah,
it had gone, because that makes
mhm.
sense. If it's 400 years, it's probably
Yeah,
nobody
exactly,
remembers what it was like
exactly.
before that. And I would presume that there was nothing really written down. I don't know if it was like a,
That's the thing, right? They
yeah,
don't have an orthography. They don't have a system of writing, so it is all oral history.
yeah.
Um, we're working on it because, yeah, that's part of the project, is that they can have their own system of writing. They can write down their histories, their cultures. They can do, like farming manuals, health manuals, whatever they want, because they'll have a written language and like a written corpus of work that can be passed from generation to generation.
And so
So
am I interpreting that right? That before you guys arrived with this project, they have not had any type of a written language before?
right, well, so yeah, I mean, French is the language of wider communication. So
Okay.
like the kids learn French in school, um, but most, like, outside of the capital, there's a good bit of illiteracy among women and children.
Okay.
A good bit, and men actually. The further out you go, and like my teammates they bought some land in a village about 7 kilometers from here, and yeah, I mean, they had to do it officially. They had to get it, you know, officially done, and every single man, I think, in the village that signed with an X.
Hmm.
So um, that wouldn't be the case in my neighborhood. My neighborhood's a little bit more educated and wealthy
Hmm.
on the spectrum, I guess. And so, yeah, I mean, people can write around me, but uh, the literacy rate is pretty low.
Hmm.
So,
What's their what is their, like, did they, let's say, more out into the more rural communities, or maybe even as you get closer to the neighborhood that you're in, are they more open to becoming more literate, or do they have any preference? How are they responding to the idea?
um, it's funny because, yeah, the sociolinguistic situation is pretty interesting, because actually a lot of my neighbors are refugees from a neighboring country. They used to live there, and they were targeted to be killed, so they came back here, and this is kind of the home of their grandparents,
Mm.
and so they ended up kind of just resettling here.
Hmm.
And so actually some of them speak a little bit of English even too. um, and where was I going with this? Why was I telling you this? They're open to learning. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so um, well, first of all, so a lot of them are like not interested in um, war or any kind of like conflict. So it's kind of like, ironically, kind of, they're like kind of humanist. They're like, we're all one, we're all the same, we're all together.
Mm.
On the like religion side, but you're talking about the literacy side. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of them actually got refugee status and moved to the West, or like their cousins or their uncles or their brother actually live in Europe or Australia or America, and have actually received more like support and excitement from the diaspora,
Hmm.
because they're losing their language. They're not able to teach their kids their language, and so and they actually send money back to our neighborhood as kind of like their tithe. So my neighbors are kind of dependent on them. So if they're excited about something, then my neighbors are excited about something. So it's kind of like approval through via these people that live overseas.
Hmm. The people who have
There's
gone out onto the fringes of I'm getting into Petersonian stuff now. They've kind of gone out to the edge of the non-map territory,
Yeah,
and are
yeah,
bringing the gold back to the community.
yeah. And there are some people who like jump on right away, and then some people I think will just take time. Some people see the importance right away. Yeah, it just depends on the person.
Hmm.
It just depends on the
Interesting.
person. Well, and honestly, like, women aren't super interested. I mean, it's very traditional here, and pretty abject poverty. So women are mostly raising kids and chopping down firewood and hauling water, and they don't really have the heads. I mean, yeah, a new writing system isn't what is forefront on their mind.
Yeah, not top of the list.
Yeah.
What do the men do most of the time?
Okay, well, in the village, there's more farming going on. Where I am, it's an interesting situation, just kind of what I just described, in that there's a heavy dependence on people sending money in. So actually, a lot of men don't do a lot because their rice is paid for by outside sources. And there's not, and it's not that they're like by character lazy. It's not that at all. But there's no work to be had. So, yeah, not a lot of the country is trying to start a cashew movement, planting cashews. And so I think people are trying to get on board with that. What else do the men do? There's some farming, but yeah, again, my neighborhood's kind of like a religious, prestigious neighborhood. So most people see farming as beneath them. Which, yeah, made it kind of hard for my teammates who came to do like community development through farming methods. But that's why they bought land in the village, and they mostly work with villagers. And that's why it's good for the translation work, because this is kind of the sociolinguistic like hub for this people group. Like people from around the world come back here for the holidays and stuff. So yeah, it's working for us in that way. Yeah, but there's really not a lot of like work for the men to do. So they don't do much.
Interesting. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to say about that and in your work?
No, I think that was a good coverage of it.
All right, good. Well, I wanted to turn to something else, because you've already talked about how you found Jordan Peterson and how you got to Paul Vanderklay. I know that you've mentioned this before on the Discord. You're probably like, what's he going to say?
I know, I really am. I'm like, what's it going to be?
Well, I was recently listening to, I haven't finished it yet, but there was an interview between a scholar named James K.A. Smith and Rebel Wisdom. And I can't even remember what all he does. I know he's an author. I know he's an intellectual. He's an academic. And David Fuller on Rebel Wisdom asked him a little bit about what he thought about Jordan Peterson. And, he didn't seem like super warm to Jordan Peterson. I mean, he wasn't throwing him under the bus or anything, but one of the things that he mentioned was he wished that Peterson's message was a little less gendered. And I think that's the wording that he used. And I think I interpreted that as either less aimed towards men or else fashioned. Maybe it was more fashioned in a way that seems to draw more men than it does women. At least, it seems to be that way. Now, Peterson has said, well, most people find out about me through YouTube, and that's more of a male,
right.
Environment anyway. So it might be just a selection bias. But I think that you have said at least something similar. If you haven't exactly said that, it seems like I wanted to see if I remember right that you have more of an idea, or you're interested in maybe making Peterson's more.
Well, maybe James K.A. Smith's my writer guy. Maybe that's who I need to connect with.
But maybe more geared toward a message that could attract more of the female mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with Mr. James K.A. Smith on this, because you heard my thing with Annemiek, right? Or
I did. I'm trying. I can't remember that, because I did hear you talk to Annemiek, and I did hear you talk to Carlos as well. Those are two completely different topics of discussion.
That's right. But they were both super fun. Yeah. Well, with Annemiek, I was saying I think Peterson should either find a woman to give her permission to present his material in a woman friendly geared way, or like hire an author to kind of rearrange the material in 12 Rules for Life in a more female friendly manner. Because like, I don't fault the guy. Like, I think he's amazing, but not everybody can be everything to everyone. And I think he's done great with men and to like a certain contingent of women, you know, but not all women. And that's okay. I just think like his information would be super beneficial for women too. I especially think of young girls, and like, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, Peterson's message is tough love, and that's good for men. Tough love isn't, women don't usually need tough love.
What?
We need it.
Why do that? So this was part of, I had a 2-part question. You started answering part of it there. But what is it about, you know, I think you're getting a little bit into what it is about his message that maybe is, you know, doesn't penetrate for women. What is it that you think it is about you where that wasn't like a stumbling block for you?
Well, yeah, I think I mentioned this in my conversation with Job. What really got me to Peterson in the first place was his head-on teaching or handling of suffering in life. That's what Job and I talked about. I feel like the West and the Western church, we don't do great with suffering. And Peterson was just like, look, it's gonna happen. You can deal with it, or you can be messed up by it. Like, those are your options. You get to decide. And it's just kind of an empowering message. Like, and so women need to hear that too, but in a softer way. And I think maybe probably part of the reason that I could accept it was like, I don't know, I'm a single woman living overseas. Like, I do a lot of like male roles, things that my friends who have husbands, their husbands do. I mean, all kinds of little things, big things. I employ people. I have to make kind of like male decisions. I mean, you know, I came out of a complementarian denomination, so like I'm pretty gender based. Like, I'm down with traditional roles within a marriage, but when you're not married, it's a little hazier. So like, that might be part of it. That might be part of it was why I could roll with Jordan Peterson's presentation easier. But I mean, I think there's a lot of women, like the women on the Discord. It would be an interesting kind of like survey or something to see what they would say. You know, we'll
ask all 4 of them.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's the thing about the Discord too, is like, sometimes by names I can't actually tell what gender someone is.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, well, so if there are women that are lurking, I would wish that they would be more active.
Yeah.
But I do think that's maybe one reason why the suffering thing, and the just kind of like the mindset I have to jump into as I don't know, a single woman living here, like that's probably part of it too.
Do you think, as far as either softening, I think is what you said, or altering, or in some way, you know, filtering is probably a bad way of saying it, but just adjusting Peterson's message for women, do you think it would need even a further delineation depending on the type of audience? Like, you had mentioned that you're more, you know, you can be on board, or you're not all of that opposed to the idea of like gender roles, but do you think that Peterson could be, do you think that he would need to be altered, his message, in such a way to be catered, one, toward a type of, you know, person who is more, you know, I don't like that, the more what's the E word for it, egalitarian versus complementarian. And I know these are probably more Christian-y type words, but just, you know, people who think that there are such things and that there is value in gender-based roles versus those who don't, see the world that way. Do you think Peterson would work with one and not work with the other, or would work with both?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think Annemiek made this point, and I think it's a really good one. Women are very intuitive. And I think that's part of the difference between women and men. Like, Peterson told men a lot of things that I think once they started doing them, they saw that they were correct, but it wasn't as intuitive and as like deeply rooted as like, I mean, we're more wired to like want good relationships, want a monogamous, steady, stable relationship. Like, that's not something that we need to be told we should do. Like, that's already there. It's more Peterson telling us how to, like, pick well, choose well, communicate well, stick through the bad stuff well. Like, it's more that I think women would benefit from. So that doesn't answer your question at all. I don't know. I think you'd have to hook women, just like, I mean, men, there was that scandal, and like, a lot of people said, I came for the scandal and I stayed for the content.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant to sound to me too, you'd have to like show women why they need to watch this video, and also the video would need to be shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Because girls just, I don't know, women, I hypothesize we just, like, with our free time, we do other things than watch YouTube, and that's kind of been proven. So they have to be shorter clips, I'd say.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt because I don't want to interrupt your flow, but it just reminded me that Paul Vanderklay has had the observation, that women read and that men either watch videos or listen to podcasts.
Yeah. I read a thing because I kind of like want to write someday. So I read Writing Fiction for Dummies. And that was like one chapter. It was like women make up 80% of the book market in America or something crazy like that. And, all those self-help books, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Mm-hmm.
Basically any kind of relational self-help book is going to fly off the shelves. Yeah. Women might not like be proud of it or like talk about it openly or whatever, but those things are going to sell. And so if I'm not opposed to, this is kind of a translation principle, like the diffusion part of the translation process. You find out what your audience is attracted to, you find out what your audience is going for. And, so like here, when we come out with a Bible, it is going to be a blue or green or purple cover because that's what a holy book is. That's what a holy book looks like. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get Peterson into the hands of as many young women as possible, I guess I go for young women because they're still like formative years. They're still making those like important decisions, but I guess it could be older women too. Look at what they're buying. Like, I'm not opposed to like some kind of, they could even be in magazines, like, teen magazines or whatever, but I don't know if magazines would accept that content. I don't know.
Do you think that Peterson's message is more important for a man versus a woman, or do you think that it's a message just important no matter what kind of person you are?
I mean, I'm definitely glad he started with men. What I sense from the Discord, which maybe this isn't like an accurate snapshot of real life, but it's kind of reminding me now of like, how like China had that one child policy for years, and now they've got this massive like man to woman imbalance ratio. Yeah. And so I feel like there's going to be all these guys who are like getting it together and doing what Peterson told them to do, and they're going to look around and be like, okay, now where's the girl that like isn't crazy, or isn't a harpy or whatever, and it might be harder to find them if like women don't jump on board some of these messages as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're frozen, but I don't know if I'm frozen to you. Can you hear me?
You froze for right after you said that. You froze. Okay, you're back.
Okay, hi. So I think I am glad that he started with men, but I think it's also important that women hear too.
So I get the impression that he just had a message out there and men
Yeah.
started paying attention, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I don't think he ever, well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched every single thing he's done. I've watched a lot, but I don't think he was ever like, I'm out for the men, you know?
Right. Like he's even been challenged on that too. And he said initially he was saying, no, I'm not like focusing my message toward men. Um, and he said women can benefit from my message too. And then I think he changed his tune a little bit because either he started talking to somebody, I could be remembering it wrong, but he started really thinking about it. And he said, you know, a lot of the men in the West are really in desperate need of the message that I'm giving. And if it is all men that come to see me, that's great, because you know what? Men live with and impact women. And so if they are getting better, this, you know, by either indirectly is going to help the women that they are in relationships with and that they interact with as well. So I just remembered that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the two genders, it makes more sense. Well, one, because he's a man. Like, I'm not gonna, so he kind of has that, even though he's a psychologist, he's been practicing for 30 years, da 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 da. But number one, that. Number two, yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think like if women see like a stable, dependable guy, I think their like intuition will actually override the nonsense that they were taught at university, you know, in high school and university or whatever, that you don't need a man until you're, you know, totally career satisfied and you're 35, you know, whatever. I think that our intuition would override, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
This is just like percolating in my head. I'm not really sure what the question is, but if you have any thoughts about this, you know, I'd be interested in what they are. You know, particularly in the West, particularly in, I guess, more affluent, affluent Western cultures where, you know, after people go to their normal, you know, grade school and high school, and then they go off to university, a lot of the message, both for men, I think for generations now, but also for women, is kind of on the heels of what you were talking about there, where it's just like, you know, go and find your career and find, you know, a vocation. And I can certainly see the benefits in that, right? It's like you need to be in a position where, you know, one way of looking at life is you need to be in a position where you can support yourself and care for yourself, because particularly in Western societies, you know, there's not a lot of communal type, you know, that's really been fractured. The idea of you have this little tribe or you have this village, you know, it continues to spread out and to fracture to where we're all very individuated at this point. And from a woman's perspective, at least as I'm thinking about it, you know, more traditional and going further back in time where it was more tribal and it was more communal, you know, there was, I don't know if I'm going to say this the right way, but it seems like maybe there was less of a need. What's the right way to say it? There was, well, maybe for women in general, it seemed like the way that society was set up, there was less of a need for a woman to have to go and find a way to fend for herself, because the whole society and the whole structure was built to make sure that she could be provided for, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And maybe now with changes in society and with, you know, just the way that society has, well, I said changed, I'll continue to use that word. You know, there is more of a need for a woman to be able to find ways to be able to provide for herself, make her own living, to be self-sustainable. And it seems like part of Peterson's message is, if that is all that we are telling women that we are robbing them of something potentially that, they can't get back. And there are some women, and what I'm talking around is the ability to have children, to care to care for children. And this is something that we've talked about, or that is talked about a lot, that men can do this as well. Obviously men can't birth babies, at least what we're calling biological, the biological
Right, yeah.
reality of a person that can carry a child. There's only one type of person that can do that, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyway, I'm kind of rambling here, but the point that I'm making is Peterson, his part of his message seems to lean more in what would be called a traditional direction of, it seems like one of his messages specifically to women is, hey, don't be so quick to just completely throw that away, even if you feel like it's not something that you want right now, or that you would even want. That seems
Right.
to be kind of a standard idea that is in Western society of, it's not important for you to want to ever be a mother. And Peterson, at least in his own life, I know that's one of the things that he has said he told his daughter is, I don't want you to throw away the idea of becoming a mother. I think that's a very important thing, and a very important thing for you to be able to experience. So I was just curious, what your thoughts are on that
No,
rambling that I was just
I
doing.
agree, because, well, if it is tilted in that direction, I think it's because Western society is tilted in the other direction, and he's trying to bring a balance.
Mhm.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, again, I think true love or true empowerment we can use in this sense is setting the whole truth on the table
Mm.
and letting somebody pick it up or set it down. And what Westerns, what we're getting a lot out of the media and even from like schools and like maybe even parents to a degree is
Mhm.
one-sided. It's like, go pursue your dreams because you can be anything.
Yeah.
And we're leaving out that other part of, yeah, you could also be a mom, and if you want to, you could stay home with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And this option A of motherhood has a like expiration date on it.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep that in mind. Like, I'm not saying, tell your daughter to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I'm just saying, like, put the whole truth on the table and let her pick. And also realizing, what you want when you're 22 and what you want when you're 32 are probably going to be different.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel like that's a sexist message. I don't feel like that's like an oppressive message to tell women. I feel like that's just putting the whole message on the table and letting them sift through themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's more of what you were saying before, is to soften the message of Peterson a little bit, because I think, in ways he can say that message and it could come across as very hard and turn,
Mm-hmm.
Some women off to wanting to even hear it at all, or to see him as, somebody who is sexist. And so yeah, maybe a softening of that message, exactly how you put it right there, which is, I just want to throw this out there for you, and
Yeah,
something
more
to
like
consider. Yeah.
couched in questions. Women, I mean, so what is it that you really want? I know what your professors are telling you at school. What is it that you deep down really want? I want you to think about what you want your life to look like in 7 years. How do you think you're going to get there? Just questions, like leading questions. Women do better with that. We're going to go home. We're going to think about it because our intuition is going to push us.
Yeah.
We don't need to be yelled at and like told, what all the things.
Right.
I feel like less women need to be told to clean their room. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's difficult too, because sometimes you have certain biases of the way that you think the world should be, and there are people who see the world in such a way where they think, well, yeah, we do need to empower women, and what they mean behind that is empower women to go off and lead their own lives, and they don't need, a man to support them or to be there for them. They can, it's okay to be single and to pursue your career and never have motherhood. And I don't disagree with that. I think that is an option for people who want that. And it's interesting because it's for me at least, I'm undecided on it. It's hard to say which one is better than the other, right? I see both sides of, we've talked about Enneagram, I see all sides.
Yeah,
um,
right there with you, my friend. Except that
yeah.
I'm a woman, and yeah, well, as evidenced on the Discord, like women, the meaning crisis, I think the meaning crisis looks different with women. Maybe some women would disagree with me. Feel free to call me out in the comments section. But, um, and also I think, I mean, like, I'll, I won't share too much, but I'm like, I'm 32. I have like the most meaningful job I could wish for. And yeah, the idea of not being a mom is a heavier thing than I expected it to be and
Mm,
felt it
mm,
7 years ago or whatever.
yeah.
So, I mean, I guess just within my own life, I feel like, you know, Jordan Peterson's message rings true, and it's kind of hard to get past that and say, well, maybe it's different for other women. Maybe it is, but I will say that, but I don't believe that at all.
Mm.
I don't know. So.
Yeah, one of the things, you know, in my experience, whenever I was younger, before I was married, before I had kids, you know, I didn't really have any kind of desire or a want for kids. But there also wasn't a, oh no, kids would just get in the way of what I want to do in my life. And part of that is because, you know, I'm a pretty low ambition person. I never really had a vision for this is what I want to do with my life. And I have to make sure that, you know, I do this, this, and this, and I'm going to sacrifice these things so that I can make sure and get that. I'm more of a go with the flow kind of, let life come to me and whatever arrives. And in that, so there was never a, I really want to be a dad someday, you know. But when I became a dad, I just, I cannot express, I could not, I never knew how much, you know, I could have loved it. You know, I never knew what that kind of love for someone else existed, you know, and it's different.
Mm-hmm.
The flavor of it is different than like a romantic type love or the love of a spouse. It's not better, but it's different, you know, and I never would have known what that would be like until I experienced it. And so, you know, I'm always reticent to tell somebody, I'm always reticent to tell anyone something one way or the other, you know, that, oh yeah, this is the way that it needs to be. But I'm certainly reticent, or maybe I just, maybe I'm just a little, that just makes me wonder for that person when they say, yeah, I'm certain I just never want to be a parent. I don't ever want to have any kids. It's just like, yeah,
you're 26, so yeah, for sure. Well, and maybe that's another thing, like presenting some facts and figures in like your book or whatever you're going to give to the women of doing some surveys and, you know, doing some kind of, you know, just presenting that information to women take into account what other women have said.
Yeah.
That would, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if there's just a concern out there that, well, if you share that information, you know, less women are going to go and pursue the empowered woman narrative where they're off on their own and they're doing their own thing. And you know, there is a case that's made out there that we need more of that. There's not enough of that out there in the world as Western society changes more and more into what it is. And like I was saying before, you know, there are people who are pushing for more of that to happen. And there are people kind of on the other side of the spectrum that are like, well, we're losing more and more women to more, you know, traditional roles, or finding meaning in raising a family and pouring themselves into the family rather than chasing a career, or the even more difficult task of trying to balance the two things. And so I guess I don't really know what I'm trying to say here, but it seems like there are two competing sides that want to push for one more than the other. And they have like various reasons, you know. There are some more traditional people who I think feel like, well, our society is going to fall apart if we don't push more for this, traditional roles for women. And you have this other piece of society, or this other group that says, well, no, we need to continue to liberate women from this one way of living. Uh-oh, I lost you for a second.
Hey.
Oh, there you are. You're back.
Sorry, the last thing I heard was, well, women leaving the workforce.
Uh-oh, you're frozen again.
Where were we before
I don't know where we were. Okay, so I've unpaused the recording because we had some technical issues there. But I had been talking for a long time, and then you froze, so I don't know how much you heard of what I said. But to try to sum up what I was saying, okay. I think what I was trying to say is, I think there are more than two, but there are certainly two different ways of viewing, let's say, women in society in general. And one is, the more traditional mode, and one is the more, we'll say, progressive or non-traditional or liberal mode. And I think a fair-minded approach to either of these two perspectives is both are trying to make society good or make society better in some way. And I think what I understand you saying, and what I agree with, is that you put the pros and cons of both of these two perspectives out there, and just let people freely choose which one fits best for them. Yeah. And there are some completely different aspects of even looking at things that way that have their pros and cons. But just generally speaking, I hear that that's what you're saying, and I think that I agree with that for the most part.
Yeah, I'd agree too. Because, yeah, I feel like what we're seeing now is just this automatic assumption that an empowered woman, well, no, that's not true, because I think, like I said, I think true empowerment comes with choice. So, yeah, an empowered woman would be the woman who's been given a choice, given the, full data in order to make the choice, and gets to make the choice. So I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Just thinking of something else and it flew out of my brain. Well, it's getting late for you, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, we're up to 10 o'clock here. I did drink coffee, but yeah, we're coming up on the hour mark. I know people like to keep these things at an hour, so.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, but I know you've been up for a really long time because.
No, I actually slept.
Oh, okay.
I slept in between there.
Well, that's good. I was worried that whenever I was talking to you on the Discord before I went to bed last night, that you've been up ever since then.
No, I slept a bit.
All right. Well, I think that's everything that I wanted to get to. I mean, I had Enneagram on here as a fallback if we wanted to talk about that too.
I need to reread before I can, in any way sound knowledgeable, except that, I mean, like I told you on the chat when you said you were 9, I'm like, the one person on this Discord that I could have guessed was you being a 9. And a whole bunch of 8s.
Yeah, that's the, I don't know, that's the one that resonates with me the most. I have said, we're talking about things that people probably have no clue about. Enneagram is a personality typing system. I'm not going to get into all of it right now. You can Google it and research
it. That's true.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll let you wind down and take care of what you need to take care of before you're done for the night over there. But
all right. Well, it's been good.
Yeah, it's good talking to you, and I'll see you around on the Discord. And if anybody's watching this that's just a Discord only person, I don't put out the invites. I know Job has put out invitations to talk to him on Discord. I'd like to put out the invite if you want to talk about something, or if you just want to share your story, or you want to explore some things, just let me know. That's what this channel is here for. So feel free. Yeah. All right, Shelly. Well, take care.
All right.
Get some rest. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you. Bye.